Hello everyone, today Biker with a Heart bring you a story full of humanity and compassion. We hope you enjoy listening.
The rain-slicked streets of downtown Manhattan gleamed under the sodium glow of streetlights, but in the shadow of towering glass skyscrapers, Emily Harper clutched a flash drive like it was the last thread of her sanity. It was just past midnight, and the office of Vanguard Capital, her prison for 3 grueling years, loomed empty behind her. Her boss, Harlan Voss, had left hours ago, but his parting words echoed in her mind, "Cross me, and you'll vanish like the others." Trembling, she slipped into the alley, heart pounding as footsteps splashed closer. Voss's security detail? Or worse? She fumbled for her phone, dialing the one number she hadn't called in years, the man who'd once sworn to shield her from the world's cruelties. If this tale of hidden truths and unbreakable bonds is pulling you in, smash that like button now and subscribe for the full ride. Because stories like Emily's don't just unfold, they roar. Alexander Jax Thorne revved his Harley into the night, the engine's thunder cutting through the city's hum like a vow renewed. At 42, Jax carried the weight of old wars on his leather-clad shoulders, scars from a desert deployment that stole his brother and left him with a promise etched in blood: protect the innocent, no matter the cost. His Iron Oath Club, a brotherhood forged in the fires of forgotten battles, wasn't just a motorcycle crew. It was a family chosen in the crucible of loss. Emily's call had come like a ghost from his past. She was the little sister of his fallen comrade, the one he'd pulled from the rubble of their shared grief a decade ago. "Jax, I can't do this alone." Her voice had cracked over the line. "He's destroying lives, families like ours. I have proof." Now, as he weaved through traffic, the flash drive's secrets burned in his thoughts. Embezzlement schemes that had bankrupted veterans' funds, leaving men like him destitute and broken. He found her huddled against a dumpster, rain matting her dark hair, eyes wide with the terror of betrayal. "Emily," Jack said, killing the engine and dismounting with a gentleness that belied his rugged frame. He pulled off his jacket, draping it over her shivering form. The scent of wet leather and engine oil mingled with the alley's metallic tang, grounding her in the moment. She thrust the drive into his calloused hand. "Voss is laundering money through fake charities. It's not just numbers, it's people. Widows, orphans from wars we fought in. If he finds out I copied this..." Her voice trailed off, but Jack saw the signs of aggression in her posture. The way she flinched at shadows. No need for graphic tales. The fear said enough. Jax's jaw tightened, memories flooding back. The promise he'd made at his brother's graveside, under a relentless sun that mirrored the one baking the distant sands. "I swore I'd keep you safe, kid. That hasn't changed." He helped her to his bike, her arms wrapping around his waist as they roared out of the alley. The city's neon blur, a stark contrast to the moral storm brewing inside him. Back at the Iron Oath clubhouse on the outskirts, a weathered warehouse ringed by chain link and the low growl of idling Harleys, Jax gathered his crew, 20 hardened riders, each with their own ghosts. Noah, the ex-cop nursing a bullet scar from a corrupt bust. Ethan, the mechanic whose hands shook from phantom IED blasts. They crowded around the scarred oak table, the air thick with the aroma of black coffee and motor oil. Emily sat at the edge, her fingers tracing the club's emblem, a iron-wrought oath scroll, symbolizing bonds that time couldn't erode. She explained in halting words, Voss's empire on Wall Street wasn't built on ambition alone. It preyed on the vulnerable, forged documents, siphoned funds from relief programs, trails leading to shattered homes and unspoken desperation. "I was just his assistant," she whispered, filing reports, ignoring the whispers. "But tonight, I saw the ledgers. It's a house of cards, and I'm the one who can topple it." The room fell silent. save for the distant patter of rain on tin roofs. Jax's eyes met hers, a silent pact forming. This wasn't about vengeance, it was justice, the kind that honored the fallen by lifting the living. As dawn crept over the horizon, painting the skyline in hues of bruised purple, Jax stepped outside, lighting a cigarette against the chill. The club had voted unanimously, ride with her, expose the rot. But Wall Street's wolves didn't yield easily. Voss had ties to badges and boardrooms, a web of corruption that could ensnare them all. Jax exhaled smoke into the air, watching it twist like unanswered questions. He'd lost too much to back down now. Emily joined him, her face pale but resolute. "What if they come for us?" she asked, voice barely above the wind. "Then we stand," Jax replied, crushing the cigarette under his boot. "That's the oath." Inside, the engines stirred to life, a symphony of loyalty that drowned out the city's indifferent pulse. They didn't know it yet, but this flash drive would ignite a chain reaction, drawing the full might of the Iron Oath against an empire built on lies. For Jax, it was more than evidence, it was redemption, a chance to fulfill the promise that had haunted his nights for years. As the first rays pierced the clouds, the convoy formed, headlights cutting through the mist like beacons of moral fire. Emily rode beside him, the weight of truth lighter now, shared among brothers who understood sacrifice. The road ahead twisted toward the heart of the financial district, where glass fortresses hid darker dealings. Jax glanced back at his crew, their faces set in quiet determination. No roaring fury, just the steady resolve of men who'd stared down worse than suits and scandals. Emily's hand tightened on the handlebar, a spark of hope igniting in her chest. This wasn't the end of her fear, it was the beginning of something unbreakable. In a world of broken promises, the Iron Oath would remind them all what honor demanded. But as they merged onto the highway, a black SUV peeled out from a side street, tailing them with predatory intent. Jax's instincts flared. The hunt had begun. He signaled the crew, engines surging in unison. The chase was on, not for speed, but for the soul of justice itself. The black SUV surged closer, its tinted windows reflecting the morning haze like voids of intent. Jax's grip tightened on the handlebars, the vibration of his Harley thrumming through his veins like a war drum from distant memories. Rain-slicked asphalt blurred beneath the tires as the Iron Oath convoy pushed forward, a phalanx of chrome and leather cutting through the awakening city. Emily clung to Jax's back, her breath ragged against the wind, the flash drive now tucked safely in his vest pocket, a talisman of truths too heavy for one soul alone. Behind them, Noah revved his bike to flank the left, his ex-cop eyes scanning the SUV's plates through the rearview mirror. "It's Voss's crew," he shouted over the roar, voice steady but edged with the scar of old betrayals. Ethan matched pace on the right, his mechanic's hands steady despite the ghosts that made them tremble in quiet moments. Jax nodded once, a silent command rippling through the pack. No panic, no reckless spins, just the calculated rhythm of brothers who'd evaded worse than urban predators. He eased off the throttle, letting the convoy weave into thicker traffic, the SUV forced to hesitate at a yellow light. Horns blared in protest, but the bikers flowed like water around obstacles, their engines a low growl that masked the rising tension. Emily's heart hammered, memories of Harlan Voss's office flashing, the cold gleam in his eyes as he dismissed another ruined family, papers shuffling like whispers of doom. "They're gaining," she murmured. Her voice lost to the gale, but felt in the press of her arms around Jax's waist. The chase spilled onto the elevated highway, where the skyline unfolded in jagged silhouettes against a sky bleeding orange. Jax glanced in his mirror, spotting the SUV darting between lanes, its driver a shadow of aggression behind the wheel. He signaled again, split and shadow, the club divided seamlessly. Half peeled off toward an exit ramp, drawing any trailing eyes. while Jax led the core group onward, Emily's safety his unyielding anchor. The air whipped sharp with exhaust and the faint, acrid bite of city smog, a sensory reminder that this wasn't some desert skirmish. It was the concrete jungle, where justice wore suits and corruption hid in spreadsheets. Jax's mind raced back to the promise carved in his soul, the one whispered over his brother's casket amid the scent of fresh earth and faded metals. "Watch over her, Jax. She's all we've got left." That vow had pulled him from the bottle years ago, forging the iron oath from shattered vets into a force of quiet reckoning. As the highway curved, Jax spotted a service road veering toward the industrial edge of town. He took it, the convoy thundering down a narrower path lined with rusting warehouses and chain-link fences rattling in the breeze. The SUV followed, closing the gap with aggressive bursts of speed, but Noah swung wide, blocking its path with a precise skid that forced it to brake. Tires screeched, a metallic wail echoing off the buildings, but no collision, just the poise of men who valued lives over spectacle. Ethan looped back, his bike a blur as he positioned for the counter. "We've got your 6, he called, voice carrying the weight of shared foxholes. Emily's fear twisted into something fiercer, a spark of the resilience Jax had seen in her as a girl, orphaned by the same sands that claimed her brother. "We can't outrun them forever," she said, her words clearer now in the relative hush of the side road. Jax didn't respond immediately. Instead, he guided them into the shadow of an old freight yard, where derelict trains loomed like forgotten sentinels. The club regrouped there, engines idling to a conspiratorial purr. Noah dismounted first, pulling a compact scanner from his saddlebag, a relic from his badge days, jury-rigged for truths that official channels ignored. "Plates are fakes," he confirmed, wiping sweat from his brow, "but the tech inside, high-end. Voss isn't playing small." Jax killed his engine, the sudden silence amplifying the distant hum of the city and the soft patter of residual rain on metal roofs. He turned to Emily, his weathered face softening under the brim of his cap. "This evidence of yours, it's not just files. It's a lifeline for folks like us, the ones Wall Street chews up and spits out." She nodded, pulling a crumpled photo from her pocket. A faded image of her brother and Jax, arms slung around each other in desert fatigues, grins defiant against the heat. "He'd be proud," she whispered, "of all of you." The group huddled, the air thick with the aroma of cooling engines and damp leather. Ethan sketched a quick route on his phone, tracing paths through back alleys to the heart of the district. "We hit the federal building by noon, hand it over clean with witnesses. But if they block us—" His voice trailed, the implication hanging like exhaust fumes. Jax's eyes scanned the horizon, where the first towers pierced the clouds, symbols of the empire they challenged. Corruption there wasn't blatant, it was surgical, slicing away at veterans' pensions, widows' savings, all under the guise of progress. The Iron Oath had seen it before, in boardrooms that echoed the indifference of command posts far away. A low rumble announced the SUV's approach, headlights sweeping the yard like searchlights. Jax stood, his presence a bulwark. "Mount up," he ordered, voice calm as tempered steel. The club moved as one, a symphony of zips and clicks, but this time with purpose beyond evasion. They burst from the yard in formation, Jax and Emily at the lead, the flash drive's secrets fueling their resolve. The SUV gave chase again, but now the bikers knew the terrain. The hidden cuts through construction zones, the blind spots where traffic cams faltered. Noah hacked a signal light ahead, buying precious minutes, his fingers flying over a makeshift device born of necessity. As they neared the district's edge, the chase intensified, the SUV ramming a barrier to close in. Jax swerved, shielding Emily as debris scattered like shrapnel. No blood, no graphic scars, just the raw pulse of survival, the kind that bound them tighter. In that moment, Emily felt the shift, from lone whistleblower to part of something unbreakable. The Iron Oath wasn't storming gates with fury. They were carving a path with honor, each mile a testament to promises kept. They broke free onto a bustling avenue, the SUV lost in the snarl of morning rush. Jax exhaled, the wind carrying away the tension like smoke from a battlefield. But he knew this was merely the opening salvo. Voss's web extended deep into halls of power where justice bent to the highest bidder. At the clubhouse earlier, they'd planned contingencies, contacts in overlooked corners, allies from old wars who owed the oath. Now, as the financial spires loomed, Jax radioed the crew. Eyes sharp, we deliver this truth, or we die trying. Emily leaned forward, her voice steady against his ear. For him, for all of them. The convoy pressed on, engines harmonizing in a roar that silenced doubts. Wall Street awaited, its polished facade cracking under the weight of what was coming, a reckoning not of violence but of unyielding integrity. In the rear view, the city receded, but the shadows lengthened, hinting at the storms yet to break. Jax's hand covered hers briefly on the throttle, a silent vow renewed. They would stand together against the tide. The financial district pulsed with the rhythm of ambition, a labyrinth of glass and steel where deals were struck in whispers and fortunes evaporated like morning mist. Jax guided the convoy through the narrowing streets, the Harley's low rumble a counterpoint to the shrill honks of luxury sedans parting like waves before them. Emily's arms remained locked around his waist, her body language a mix of resolve and the lingering tremor of the chase. The flash drive pressed against Jax's chest, its digital weight heavier than any bomb he'd diffused in the sands overseas. Sunlight glinted off the spires, casting long shadows that danced like accusations across the pavement, the air thick with the sharp tang of coffee from corner vendors and the faint ozone of impending rain. They pulled up to the federal building's shadow, a monolithic structure of marble and authority that loomed like a judge's gavel. The Iron Oath dismounted in unison, their boots echoing on the concrete plaza, a circle of leather vests emblazoned with the Oath scroll emblem, standing defiant against the suited throng hurrying by. Noah scanned the perimeter, his ex-cop instincts picking up the subtle tells. A pair of men in ill-fitting jackets lingering too long by the steps, earpieces glinting under collars. Eyes on us, he muttered to Jax, voice low as the hum of idling engines faded. Ethan secured the bikes, his hands moving with the precision of someone who'd rebuilt more than machines, lives pieced back from fragments. Emily stepped forward, her heels clicking uncertainly on the stone, the borrowed jacket from Jax swallowing her frame like a shield. "This is it," she said, her voice gaining strength from the brotherhood encircling her. Inside her mind, fragments of the night replayed. Voss's office, the glow of monitors revealing ledgers that funneled aid from veterans' programs into offshore shadows, leaving families like hers in quiet ruin. No tales of brutality needed. The numbers screamed of betrayal, of promises broken by those sworn to uphold them. Jax placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch steady as the desert winds he'd once navigated. "We go in together. No one's facing this alone." The lobby swallowed them in cool sterility, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like distant warnings. Security eyed the group warily, but Jax's calm demeanor, broad shoulders squared, eyes clear of threat, eased the tension. They approached the counter, Emily sliding her ID forward with the flash drive. "I need to speak to the fraud division. This is evidence of embezzlement, millions diverted from charitable funds." The clerk's face remained neutral, but behind the scenes, Jax knew the wheels turned slowly in places like this, greased by influences that Voss commanded. As they waited in a side room, the air heavy with the scent of polished wood and stale bureaucracy, doubts crept in like fog. Jax paced, his mind drifting to the clubhouse vote, the unanimous nod around the oak table where stories of loss had bound them. Ethan, who'd lost his hearing in one ear to a blast that claimed his unit, had spoken first. "If it's for the ones we couldn't save, we ride." Noah, betrayed by a badge that valued promotions over justice, had added the weight of his scanner's findings. Voss's fakes weren't amateur. They bore the stamp of complicity from higher up. Now, in this sterile wait, Jax felt the pull of old scars, the promise to Emily's brother echoing, "Protect her, honor what we fought for." But delivering truth to power wasn't a clean ride. It invited the storm. A door swung open and a federal agent emerged. Agent Harlan, no relation to Voss, but with the same clipped efficiency. He reviewed the drive on a secure terminal, his brow furrowing as lines of code unveiled the web. Shell companies siphoning relief dollars. Trails leading to boardrooms where executives toasted over the bones of the overlooked. "This is solid," he admitted, glancing at the group. "But Voss has friends, senators, regulators. Handing this over means scrutiny on all sides." Emily met his gaze, her voice steady. "That's why we're here, not for headlines, but for the families waiting on those funds. The ones who buried brothers and still can't afford the lights." Outside, the plaza had filled with midday bustle, but tension thickened the air. Jax's phone vibrated, a burner from the club, Ethan's voice crackling through. "SUVs circling the block again. We've got company." The agent paused, sensing the shift. "You bikers, trouble follows you?" Jax's response was measured, a quiet rumble. "Trouble finds the honest. We're just the ones who stand against it." As the agent processed the files, a commotion stirred at the entrance. Voss's men, bolder now, flashing badges that rang false to Noah's trained eye. They demanded entry, citing a witness protection mix-up, but the Iron Oath formed a subtle line, their presence a wall of unyielding calm. Emily's heart raced, the room's confines amplifying the distant shouts. She thought of her brother's letters, tucked away in a drawer, words of loyalty from foxholes, promising a world where honor outlasted greed. Jax caught her eye, nodding toward the window where the convoy waited, engines ready. This wasn't about confrontation, it was the moral pivot where truth pierced the veil. The agent returned, drive in hand. "We'll verify and act, quietly but decisively. You did right bringing this." But as they filed out, the SUV idled curbside, its driver locking eyes with Jax through the glass. The plaza erupted into controlled chaos. Voss's detail moved in, not with guns blazing, but with the arrogance of assumed power, demanding the drive's return under corporate confidentiality. Noah stepped forward, his voice cutting through like a siren's wail. "False badges won't cut it here. We've got the feds now." Ethan flanked him, phone recording the exchange, capturing the bluster that masked desperation. Jax shielded Emily, guiding her toward the bikes as the club closed ranks. No fists flew. Instead, the brothers' unity disarmed the aggression, drawing stares from passers-by who sensed the undercurrent of justice unfolding. Rain began to fall in earnest, pattering on the marble like hesitant applause, washing the streets clean of the morning's evasion. They mounted up, the convoy roaring to life as sirens wailed in the distance, real ones this time, summoned by the agent's call. The SUV peeled away, tail lights fading into the downpour, but Jax knew the retaliation loomed larger. Back on the open road, Emily rode with renewed fire, the weight lifted, but the path steeper. "They'll come harder now," she said over the wind, her words blending with the storm. Jax glanced back, the federal building receding like a conquered outpost. "Let them. The oath holds." The club thundered toward the clubhouse, a phalanx against the gathering clouds, their ride a testament to redemption's quiet power. Voss's empire trembled, not from thunder, but from the unbreakable bonds that exposed its hollow core. In the rear view, the city skyline blurred, But the moral fire burned brighter, drawing them toward the heart of the reckoning. Shadows lengthened on the horizon, whispering of alliances tested and truths that would silence the wolves of Wall Street. For Jax, this was the promise fulfilled. One ride at a time, the clubhouse doors groaned open under the assault of rain-lashed wind, admitting the iron oath like weary victors from a shadowed battlefield. Jax dismounted first, his boots sinking into the gravel lot that still held puddles from the morning's evasion, the scent of wet earth mingling with the ever-present tang of oil and exhaust. Emily slid off behind him, her legs unsteady, but her chin lifted in quiet defiance. The federal building's sterile echo fading against the familiar rumble of engines powering down. The convoy had scattered any pursuit in the downpour, but the air hummed with unspoken vigilance, Noah wiping rain from his scanner, Ethan checking tire treads for sabotage, with hands that bore the faint tremor of old blasts. 20 riders now, their leather vests darkened by the storm, formed a loose circle under the overhang, faces etched with the resolve of men who traded foxholes for freeways. Inside, the warehouse's cavernous space welcomed them with the warmth of a wood stove crackling in the corner, casting flickering shadows across walls lined with faded patches and framed oaths, yellowed letters from brothers lost to sands and streets alike. Jax shrugged off his dripping jacket, hanging it on a hook scarred by years of such returns, and turned to Emily. Her dark hair clung in strands to her pale cheeks, but her eyes held a spark that hadn't been there in the alley the night before. "You did the hard part," he said, voice low as the dying rain on the tin roof. "Handing it over, that's where the real fight starts." She nodded, sinking into a worn armchair by the table. The flash drive's absence, a hollow relief laced with dread. The photo of her brother and Jax peeked from her pocket, a talisman against the uncertainty. The club gathered around the oak table, steam rising from mugs of black coffee that Ethan poured with mechanical precision. Noah laid out his findings first, the scanner's screen glowing faintly in the dim light. Voss's goons at the building. Not amateurs. Their badges were knockoffs, but the SUV's GPS pinged to a private firm, tied to his boardroom allies. They're scrambling now, pulling strings to bury the files before the feds dig deep. Murmurs rippled through the group, a low thunder of agreement. Jax leaned forward, elbows on the scarred wood, the aroma of coffee grounding the rising tension. Memories surfaced unbidden. The desert night when he'd made the promise, stars indifferent overhead as he clasped his comrade's hand. "Keep her safe, Jax, from the world that takes without giving back." That vow had birthed the Iron Oath, a family forged not in blood, but in the fire of shared silences, where loyalty outlasted the cynicism of cities like this one. Emily spoke next, her voice gaining strength amid the circle of faces that had become her unexpected shield. The ledgers showed more than money trails, fake audits signing off on diversions from relief funds, veterans' homes foreclosed, widows' pensions rerouted to luxury accounts. I filed those reports, blind to the human cost, until it stared back from the screen. She paused, fingers tracing the oath emblem on Jax's vest, the iron scroll a symbol of endurance. No need to dwell on the signs of desperation in those families. The moral weight hung heavy enough, a poetic injustice that twisted the gut. The room fell quiet, save for the stove's pop and the distant drip of eaves, each man confronting his own ghosts. Ethan's unit lost to indifferent bureaucracy, Noah's badge tarnished by superiors who bent rules for donors. Jax stood, pacing to the window where rain blurred the skyline's jagged teeth. We don't storm Wall Street with engines roaring. That's their game. Flash and fury to drown out truth. But the feds have the drive now. Our ride was to get it there intact. Yet doubt shadowed his words, a psychological undercurrent pulling at the edges. Voss's reach extended like roots through concrete, whispers of calls to senators, regulators who'd once overlooked similar schemes for campaign favors. One rider, Samuel, a quiet veteran with a limp from a roadside blast, broke the silence. What if they twist it, label us vigilantes, bury Emily as unreliable? His question hung, ethical suspense coiling tighter, forcing Jax to confront the dilemma, push harder, risk the club's fragile peace, or trust a system laced with the very corruption they fought. Outside, the storm eased to a drizzle, sunlight piercing clouds in hesitant shafts that gilded the puddles like fleeting hope. Jax stepped into the lot, lighting a cigarette, the smoke curling upward in lazy spirals that mirrored his thoughts. Emily followed, the gravel crunching softly under her steps. "You think they'll come for the club now?" she asked, arms wrapped against the chill, the borrowed jacket still enveloping her like an unspoken promise. Jax exhaled, watching the vapor twist away. They might, but oaths aren't paper. They're what holds when everything else crumbles. He thought of the brother she'd lost, the one whose letters spoke of honor as the only true north in chaos. This fight echoed that, not vengeance, but redemption through standing firm, a silent sacrifice that rippled outward. Back inside, the club voted again, voices steady around the table. Diversify the pressure, Ethan to leak redacted proofs to sympathetic journalists, Noah to trace Voss's offshore ties with his old contacts. No grand gestures, just the quiet actions of loyalty, each step a brick in the wall against greed. As evening fell, the warehouse filled with the sizzle of burgers on a grill, laughter punctuating plans, a family chosen in the crucible, their bonds the antidote to isolation. Emily joined the circle, passing a plate, her smile tentative but real. For the first time since the alley, fear receded, replaced by the warmth of belonging. But as night deepened, Jax's phone buzzed, an anonymous tip from a Fed contact. Voss was mobilizing, not with thugs but lawyers, spinning the narrative to paint the Iron Oath as extortionists. The moral storm gathered, justice's scales tipping precariously. Jax crushed his cigarette outside, the embers glowing briefly against the dark. They wouldn't yield. The promise demanded more. A deeper ride into the heart of corruption, where truths would silence the suits forever. Engines stirred in the distance, a prelude to the next dawn's reckoning. If this tale of hidden battles and unbreakable oaths is gripping you, hit that like button now and subscribe, because the road to justice only gets steeper from here. The warehouse lights hummed low, casting elongated shadows across the scarred oak table, where maps and scribbled notes lay scattered like battlefield remnants. Jax stood at the head, his calloused fingers drumming a steady rhythm on the wood, the faint scent of grilled burgers lingering from the evening's brief respite. Rain had ceased hours ago, leaving the air crisp with the promise of a clearer dawn. But inside, tension coiled like a spring wound, too tight. Emily sat nearby, her posture straighter now, the borrowed jacket draped over her shoulders as a reminder of the miles they'd covered together. The club's eyes turned to him. Noah with his scanner propped like a sentinel, Ethan sketching evasion routes on a napkin, Samuel nursing a mug that steamed against the chill seeping through the walls. "The tip's solid," Jax said, his voice a gravelly anchor in the quiet. "Voss is lawyering up, painting us as the villains, bikers shaking down a pillar of finance. By morning, the headlines could twist this into extortion, bury the drive's truths under smears." He paused, the words hanging heavy, evoking the ethical quagmire that had snared Noah's career years back. A corrupt precinct where evidence vanished into promotions. The room absorbed it, faces hardening not with rage, but the quiet resolve of men who'd learned justice wasn't swift, but earned through endurance. Emily's gaze met Jax's, a flicker of the girl he'd once shielded from rubble, now tempered by the fire of exposure. "We can't let them rewrite it," she said softly, her words carrying the weight of ledgers that had stolen futures from families, much like hers. Noah leaned in, his ex-cop scar pulling taut as he tapped the scanner's screen. "I've got traces Offshore shells Voss uses, linked to the same funds. But leaking this piecemeal risks the feds pulling back, calling it contamination. Debate rippled through the group, voices measured, each man weighing the moral cost, pushed too hard, and the oath fractured under scrutiny, hold back and corruption festered unchecked. Ethan spoke up, his hands steady despite the phantom echoes in his ears. We go public our way. Quiet allies, not splashy raids. I've got a journalist contact from the vet circuits. She owes the club for pulling her brother from a bad spot last year. Samuel nodded, his limp forgotten in the moment, adding, "And I can rally the old unit, widows who've felt Voss's cuts, testimonies, not threats." Jax exhaled, stepping to the window where the night sky stretched vast and indifferent, stars pricking through lingering clouds like distant witnesses. The promise to Emily's brother resurfaced, a vow made under a merciless sun, protect the light in her eyes, the one that war had nearly extinguished. This fight mirrored that redemption not in grand gestures, but in the silent stand against a system that devoured the vulnerable. He turned back, decision etching deeper lines on his face. We build the case wider. No lone wolves, the oath rides as one. The club murmured assent, the air shifting from doubt to unity, the crackle of the stove underscoring their bond like a heartbeat. As midnight deepened, they dispersed into action, Noah and Ethan poring over digital trails in the corner, screens glowing with encrypted paths that snaked through financial shadows. Emily joined Samuel by the maps, her fingers tracing routes from the clubhouse to overlooked corners of the city, community centers where veterans gathered, places Voss's schemes had hollowed out. The warehouse filled with the soft clatter of keyboards and the rustle of papers, a symphony of loyalty that drowned out the world's cynicism. Jax watched from the sidelines, lighting a cigarette outside under the overhang, the smoke curling into the cool breeze that carried hints of exhaust from the lot's idling sentries. Memories flooded, the desert deployment's end, his brother's last breath amid dust and debris, the weight of a dog tag pressed into his palm. Make it mean something, Jax. This did, every step a fulfillment, turning personal scars into collective armor. Emily stepped out to join him, the gravel shifting under her tentative steps, the night air nipping at her exposed skin. I keep thinking of him, she admitted, pulling the faded photo from her pocket, the image creased from countless folds. Jax's brother grinned back, arms slung around a younger version of himself. Fatigues dust-streaked but spirits unbroken. He'd say we're doing right, honor over headlines. Jax nodded, smoke trailing from his lips like unspoken regrets. He would, but Voss's web, it's not just money, it's the kind of rot that convinces good people to look away. She shivered, not from cold, but the psychological pull of it all. The temptation to retreat, to let the suit's narrative prevail. Yet here, amid the club's quiet vigil, doubt receded, replaced by the warmth of chosen family. Dawn crept in slowly, painting the horizon in muted greys that promised clarity. The club reconvened at first light, coffee brewing strong as they finalized the plan. Ethan to the journalist with redacted proofs, Samuel coordinating witness statements from those Voss had wronged, Noah monitoring Fed channels for interference. Jax would lead a small ride to a neutral drop point, ensuring no single thread unraveled the whole. Emily insisted on joining, her resolve a quiet force. I'm not hiding anymore. This ends with truth, not whispers. The group mounted up outside, engines stirring to life in a harmonious growl that vibrated through the ground, the scent of dew-kissed metal sharp in the air. But as they rolled out, Jax's radio crackled. Ethan's voice, urgent over the static. Hold up! Voss's firm just filed an injunction, claiming the drive's stolen property. Feds are stalling. The convoy halted in the lot, brakes hissing softly, the moral suspense tightening like a noose. Jax killed his engine, Dismounting to face the group, rain-fresh puddles mirroring their determined faces. This was the pivot. Corruption's counterstrike, testing the oath's steel. "We adapt," he said, voice steady as the rising sun. "Double the witnesses, triple the backups. They want to fight on their terms. We give them justice on ours." Emily dismounted beside him, her hand brushing his arm in silent solidarity. The photo tucked away, but its spirit alive in her eyes. The club nodded, remounting with renewed purpose. Tires crunching gravel as they formed up. The road ahead wound toward the city's underbelly, where truths hid in plain sight. Community halls echoing with stories of loss, allies forged in shared silences. Voss's empire loomed, its glass towers glinting mockingly in the light, but the Iron Oath pressed on, a phalanx of redemption against the tide. No roaring conquest, just the unyielding rhythm of promises kept, each mile carving deeper into the heart of corruption. Shadows of the financial district lingered even here, on the outskirts where warehouses gave way to modest neighborhoods scarred by foreclosures. Jax led the way, the convoy's pace deliberate, wind whipping through vests that bore the iron scroll like badges of endurance. Emily rode with Samuel now, her voice carrying back questions about his unit's tales, bonds that outlasted deployments, much like this one. The air hummed with possibility, the faint aroma of bakery ovens wafting from side streets, a sensory counter to the brewing storm. Yet Jax sensed the escalation. A tail in the rear view, subtle but persistent, Voss's reach extending like fingers into the dawn. At the first stop, a veterans' outreach center tucked behind chain link and faded flags, the group dismounted, greeted by wary eyes that softened at the oath emblem. Samuel introduced Emily, her words weaving the narrative. Not accusations, but facts that resonated with the room's quiet desperation. Widows nodded, sharing fragments of their plights, pensions evaporated, homes lost to administrative errors that traced back to Voss's ledgers. No graphic woes, just the poetic injustice of promises broken by those in power. Testimonies flowed, recorded on Ethan's device, building a mosaic of moral weight that no lawyer could dismantle. As they prepared to move to the next site, Jax's phone buzzed again. Noah, from the clubhouse. Injunctions gaining traction. Voss is testifying at a hearing tomorrow, spinning us as threats. The ethical dilemma sharpened, forcing a choice. Accelerate the leaks, risk backlash, or consolidate for a unified strike. Jax gathered the riders in the center's parking lot, sunlight warming the asphalt as engines idled softly. "This isn't their courtroom," he declared, eyes sweeping the circle. "It's ours, the one built on what we've lived." Affirmations rippled back, the club's loyalty a bulwark against the encroaching doubt. Emily approached, her face alight with the spark of momentum. "They're listening. For the first time, it feels like we can win." Jax clasped her shoulder, the gesture echoing the Desert Pact. Redemption pulsed in that touch, a legacy of sacrifice, honor's quiet legacy enduring. The convoy reformed, thundering toward the horizon where Wall Street's spires awaited, the moral fire kindling brighter. But in the distance, sirens hinted at the gathering tempest, Voss's final gambit unfolding. The oath would meet it head-on, silencing the wolves not with thunder, but with the unassailable truth of unbreakable bonds. The sun hung low over the financial district, its rays slicing through the haze like judgment's edge, illuminating the federal courthouse where Voss's hearing unfolded in sterile precision. Jax parked the convoy a block away, the engine's final growl fading into the city's indifferent hum, replaced by the sharp click of dress shoes on marble steps. Emily walked beside him, no longer swallowed by the borrowed jacket, but clad in a simple blouse that spoke of quiet determination, her dark hair tied back against the breeze, carrying faint scents of street food and exhaust. The Iron Oath flanked them subtly, Noah in a button-down that hid his scanner, Ethan with a satchel of recordings, Samuel limping forward with the poise of a man who'd outrun worse than legal traps. 20 riders total, scattered among the crowd like shadows, their leather vests traded for nondescript layers, but the oath-scroll tattoos peeking at collars, a silent emblem of unity. Inside, the corridors echoed with murmured consultations, the air thick with polished wood and the subtle ozone of tension. Jax's hand rested briefly on Emily's arm as they passed through security, his calloused touch a grounding force amid the suits that eyed them with veiled suspicion. "Breathe," he murmured, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder. She nodded, the weight of the morning's testimonies pressing on her, the widows' voices, steady despite loss, weaving a tapestry of moral indictment that no injunction could unravel. Voss's gambit had stalled the feds temporarily, but the club's quiet work had amplified the echoes. Ethan's journalist ally running a preliminary piece, anonymous sources feeding regulators with irrefutable trails. This hearing wasn't just procedure, it was the pivot where corruption's facade cracked under the pressure of truth. They filed into the gallery, the room's high ceilings amplifying the judge's gavel like a heartbeat. Harlan Voss sat at the defense table, his tailored suit a armor of arrogance, flanked by lawyers whose whispers carried the scent of expensive cologne and desperation. His eyes scanned the room, locking briefly on Emily with a flicker of recognition that twisted into something colder. The shadow of aggression in his posture, the way his fingers drummed like unspoken threats. But she held his gaze. The spark in her eyes fueled by the photo in her pocket, her brother's defiant grin, a talisman against the fear that had once bound her. Jack settled beside her, his broad frame a bulwark, memories of desert nights surfacing, the promise etched in sand and blood, to shield the innocent from men like this, who profited on broken oaths. The proceedings began with procedural drone, Voss's counsel spinning the narrative. The flash drive as pilfered property, the iron oath as a shadowy extortion ring preying on a respected financier. Gasps rippled through the sparse audience, but Jax's jaw tightened, recognizing the echo of old command deceptions, where truths were buried under ranks. Noah leaned forward, his ex-cop instincts cataloguing the inconsistencies. The lawyer's pauses, the subtle signals to Voss that betrayed rehearsed lies. Emily's heart pounded, the room's fluorescent hum underscoring the ethical suspense. Would the system's inertia swallow their efforts, or would loyalty tip the scales? She thought of the Veterans Center, the faces lit by hope as they shared stories of pensions vanished into voids, homes reclaimed only through sheer will, no graphic scars needed. Their quiet endurance spoke volumes, a poetic justice demanding reckoning. Then the tide shifted. The federal prosecutor, Agent Harlan from the day before, rose with a file thicker than Voss's defenses. "Your Honor, new evidence has surfaced. Corroborated testimonies from affected parties, digital audits tracing funds to offshore entities under Mr. Voss's control." He nodded toward the gallery, and Samuel stood first, his voice steady as he recounted the foreclosures that had hollowed his unit's support network, words measured but piercing. One by one, witnesses followed, widows via video link, their faces resolute on screens that cast a soft glow across the bench. Ethan's recordings played, the ledger's cold numbers blooming into human cost. Relief dollars siphoned, leaving families in the margins. The air thickened, the judge's brow furrowing as Voss's composure cracked, his fingers stilling on the table. Jax watched, the scene unfolding like a slow-burn film close up, the subtle shift in the room's energy, whispers turning to murmurs of outrage. Emily's hand found his under the bench, a silent pact amid the rising crescendo. This wasn't fury's roar, it was the power of integrity. The Iron Oath's actions rippling outward like stones in still water. Voss objected, his voice slicing sharp, but the prosecutor countered with the drive's verified contents, now backed by independent forensics that Noah's traces had hastened. This isn't isolated malfeasance. the agent stated, eyes sweeping the defense. It's systemic predation on those who've already sacrificed. The judge called a recess, but the damage lingered, corruption's web fraying under the weight of unyielding truth. Outside in the hallway, as aides scurried and Voss's team huddled in frantic conference, Jax pulled Emily aside near a window overlooking the plaza. Sunlight streamed in, gilding the dust motes like fleeting victories. "You started this," he said, his weathered face softening, "but we finished it together." She smiled faintly, the tremor in her posture easing, replaced by the warmth of redemption's dawn. The club gathered loosely, nods exchanged in the language of brothers, Ethan clapping Samuel's shoulder, Noah pocketing his device with a satisfied glint. No celebrations yet, the hearing would reconvene. But the moral momentum was theirs, a legacy of promises that outlasted courtrooms. Hours later, as the gavel fell with finality, the ruling echoed through the chamber. Injunction denied, Voss remanded pending full investigation, his empire's pillars trembling. Bailiffs escorted him out, his arrogance dimmed to a hollow stare that avoided Emily's eyes. The gallery exhaled collectively, the air lighter carrying the faint scent of rain-washed streets beyond the doors. Jax led the way out, the convoy reforming in the lot where bikes waited like loyal steeds, chrome glinting under the afternoon sun. Emily mounted behind him, her arms wrapping secure, the wind soon whipping away the courthouse's sterility. They rode back to the clubhouse under a sky clearing to blue, the highway's rhythm, a symphony of closure. Engines harmonized, the scent of asphalt and freedom sharp in the breeze. At the warehouse, the group dismounted into embraces and quiet toasts. Coffee mugs raised, stories shared around the oak table, scarred by plans now realized. Emily stood with Jax on the lot as dusk fell, stars emerging like affirmations. "He'd be proud," she whispered. The photo passed between them, its creases a map of journeys endured. Jax nodded, crushing a cigarette under his boot, the embers' glow fading into night. The oath isn't just words, it's this, standing when it counts. The club inside laughed softly, bonds unbreakable, a chosen family that had silenced Wall Street's wolves not with thunder, but with honor's steady light. Redemption bloomed in the quiet, promises fulfilled under the vast sky, leaving legacies that echoed long after the engines stilled. In a world of broken vows, the iron oath rode on, guardians of justice's flame.